all playable characters from Liyue in Genshin Impact, their lore, their backstories, and who they are. A continuation of my last video covering Mondstadt, and I'm going to do every nation. Now we're on Liyue. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. These videos do take some time to make, and like the last video and all of the videos, there won't be Archons or Fatui Harbingers because they have their own video. But let's not waste any more time and start with Ningguang. Fun fact about Ningguang, she is the first ever 4-star character I ever pulled back in 1.0. It was my second day playing, and I had no idea who she was. And she would go on to be the most reliable DPS and character I had for a long time. It also took me forever to even remotely know how to pronounce her name. Ningguang is a professional businesswoman. She has accumulated her wealth through hard work and perseverance. It is also stated that she's very meticulous with her work and holds a large amount of influence over Liyue. Even the Adepti that served Rex Lapis loyally for years have come to not only know her but respect her greatly. Although she's very well respected by almost everyone within Liyue and Liyue Harbor, she is very calculated and ruthless. She grew up very poor, so making Mora is what primarily drives her. And in today's day and age, Ningguang is almost viewed as a perfect individual. Her elegance, grace, power, and style, along with her being the most influential character within Liyue Harbor. There is only one other person in Teyvat that rivals her massive wealth, that being the Regrator and the 9th Fatui Harbinger. And all of this was even before she built the Jade Chamber, her greatest accomplishment yet. And only someone with her perseverance and massive wealth would have even been able to remotely see this through. And because she's a leader of the Liyue Qixing, she conducts all of her affairs from the chamber. It can also be turned into a weapon if Liyue Harbor ever faces any danger. Funny enough though, Ningguang in her spare time is a connoisseur of desserts or tasty treats, or other type of sweet foods. And the only person within Liyue Harbor that can rival her and is not intimidated by her is Captain Beidou, often being the polar opposite with Liyue Harbor. Ningguang fully using the nation's law and order and contracts to benefit her and her businesses, where Captain Beidou often disregards the rules, smuggling contraband goods and exotic cargo, usually going below board. Despite that though, they have massive respect for each other and would even consider themselves friends. And the reason she has not sent the Liyue Qixing to stop Beidou is her intentions are good, giving jobs to poor people within Liyue Harbor, giving them a place on her crew. It is not actually stated exactly how she gained her vision, but it was sort of underwhelming. She sort of just obtained it, and immediately after getting it, thought of a way that she could sell or make a huge profit off of it, even considering auctioning it off. That's one of the oldest running gags in Genshin Impact, that all of the earlier characters that got Geo Visions were ungrateful about them. Ningguang is no different. She was gonna sell it, which I find hilarious. She's so rich that she could care less about having a vision. Say what you will about Ningguang, but without her, Liyue Harbor would be much more vulnerable, and she's a very big reason why Rex Lapis was able to retire. Without her, that might not have been possible. Xingqiu, who is the second oldest son of the Feiyun Commerce Guild. Xingqiu is extremely wealthy and possesses a significant amount of influence, but he'll only use his status if absolutely necessary. Xingqiu likes to read, and he wants to embody the heroes that he reads about in his books. To the average person, he appears polite, quiet, and just somebody that takes his studies very seriously. But he is skilled with the sword, and has a more mischievous side, which only close friends or family get to see. His closest friends being Hu Tao and Chongyun. He has even written very successful novels and books himself, like A Legend of Sword, which to his disappointment wasn't that popular in Liyue, but his books were really popular for some reason in Inazuma and Fontaine, making him sort of a celebrity there. Learning how popular him and his books are in both Fontaine and Inazuma actually shocked him. Xingqiu is also known for having a strong sense of justice and doing the right thing. Even Yanfei, who is an attorney, says that Xingqiu is very knowledgeable and hard to argue against. He does have a solid relationship with his older brother, however. Once his older brother inherits the Commerce Guild, Xingqiu believes he'll have to do most of the heavy lifting and all the work. The way he obtained his hydro vision is also kind of underwhelming and boring. He was just scribing down some ancient texts and different fightings and martial arts, art forms. But since now he does have the hydro vision, he chooses almost always not to use it in a fight. He does like to hone his skills with the blade, but sees himself using his vision as a disadvantage, and he wants to fight fair. So unless it's an extremely dangerous foe or the other person has a vision, he won't use it. He really does have a strong sense of justice. It's kinda curious really, you almost gotta wonder why he was never born in Fontaine. Feels like he'd fit right in there, and they like his books better anyway. Keqing, who was a Yuheng of the Liyue Qiqing and a high-ranking member, even at her relatively young age. She is however a workaholic, and she finds it very difficult to make time for herself or any kind of leisure activities. She inherited this crazy sense of responsibility and tenacity from her grandfather. But interestingly enough though, Keqing is sort of an anomaly within Liyue Harbor. She doesn't really believe in all the gods and contracts. She believes that humans should deal with their own problems and work things out among themselves. And unlike most people within Liyue that absolutely adore and pretty much worship Rex Lapis, his contracts, obviously the Adepti, but everyone's loyal to him, to a fault almost. Keqing not so much. She really only gained true respect for Rex Lapis when he retired, giving the Qiqing way more responsibilities within Liyue. Apparently she's also a skeptic of visions, viewing it as an insult, and once tried to destroy her vision but it failed. So now she actually have grown to like and find use of it. When she does get around to leisure activities, shopping is her favorite pastime. But due to her high position within Liyue Qiqing, she finds it very hard to be herself and open up. She wants to maintain the status quo of her reputation and how people perceive her. And despite her status, she will not pass the buck or other tasks on to someone else. She often prefers to do things herself. In a lot of ways, Keqing was really the first person to ever truly try to consider what life would be like without an Archon, how the people could deal with things themselves, rule over themselves, and work together to run a nation outside of an Archon or deity for protection or to look up to for guidance. And Ningguang dealing with the more logistical side of things, running Liyue and Liyue Harbor. Keqing is the one with the boots on the ground, making sure everything gets done. And unlike most people within Liyue that have gone complacent over having a strong Archon that's never been overthrown, never been truly challenged, she has always lived this way, so she's 10 steps ahead of everyone. Not much really more can be said about her personality or her hobbies because she is such a workaholic. It's not specifically stated how she gained an electrovision. It's said it's through her hard work. I'm assuming probably defending Liyue, probably fighting some bandits or something, but it is stated that she was insulted that she gained a vision. Again, she's not big on belief of the gods and gaining help. She likes to do things herself, so she was more or less insulted when she got the vision. She even tried to destroy it, but it didn't work. Over time, she's grown to appreciate it and finds it actually quite useful. Well yeah, no crap, you can teleport now and have electro powers. What's not to like? I do however like that she doesn't rely on anyone or anything but herself. Again, this was ingrained into her at a young age from her grandfather. Xiangling, a very good-spirited and easygoing chef, who has the Stove God, an ancient god of ancient times in Liyue, in a shrunken down state that follows her around as her companion and loves her cooking. Pretty much everything about Xiangling is associated with cooking. She learned this at a very young age from her father, who is another renowned chef within Liyue. But despite most chefs in Teyvat, she doesn't have a specific cuisine, but she likes to expand and experiment with different ingredients, different dishes. She's not afraid to try new things. If she's not cooking and experimenting, she's usually in the wilds looking for new ingredients. This has given her some minor fame within Mondstadt and Liyue as an up-and-coming chef, and although sometimes experimenting with different ingredients doesn't always work out, sometimes you create a masterpiece that's never been tried before. But unlike most chefs in Teyvat that mainly cook for the Mora, obviously it's a business, she could care less about that. It's truly a passion for her. She doesn't care about the money she makes. It's also stated that she's very easily scared. No matter how many times Hu Tao pranks her, she always falls for it. Xiangling doesn't have a mean bone in her body though, and will never hold a grudge towards anyone. One day when she was out looking for ingredients, there was a huge downpour. She was trying to find some violet grass, so she was going to wait out the storm in a cave, where she started eating some spicy cornbread. When she fell asleep and woke up, all the rest of her bread was gone, with a mysterious creature sitting in front of her. She then took some jerky out of her backpack and fed it to the mysterious creature, obviously realizing this creature loved her food. This is how she met Goba, the once ancient stove god, and her new companion and friend. And to this day, Goba follows her wherever she goes. Now who would have guessed? She gained a pyrovision through cooking. But it's not so much the cooking aspect of it, like we talked about. She's not afraid to try new things. She's very genuine. Mora is not what drives her, so this is proof that the gods notice her good nature and how wholesome she actually is as a person is what ultimately gained her the pyrovision. It just so happened to be through her cooking, but I think no matter what her hobby or her passion was, she would have remained equally as wholesome and not be driven by selfish or greedy means. I think she was always destined to gain a vision. And if an ancient god chooses to be your companion, well, that speaks to her character as well. Hu Tao, who is the 77th director of the Wangsheng funeral parlor. Hu Tao is obviously a very quirky and upbeat person. She enjoys pranking people greatly and despises sitting around doing nothing. She is, however, a sociopath. A sociopath is an antisocial disorder, which the person constantly shows no regard for right or wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others. Despite Hu Tao being a great character, she does that almost every day, and because she's a funeral director, she makes people very uncomfortable, referring to everyone as clients, and makes people very uncomfortable going about her business. Naturally, when you're talking about people dying in such an upbeat, cheerful manner all the time, it's gonna make people unsettled. But she really doesn't mean any harm, that is just who she is. This usually leaves people with a very negative impression of her though. The audacity to try to get the business of people that are young and healthy, more often than not, just rubs people the wrong way. Something that a lot of people don't know about her though is when she is dealing with people's last wishes, she takes it very seriously and will never deviate from the client's requests. Her and Qiqi have a non-stop ongoing back and forth. Nobody despises Hu Tao more than Qiqi, but Xiao actually thinks her sense of humor is funny and interesting. Hu Tao is one of the people in Liyue Harbor that is more knowledgeable about the Adepti, their past, and already suspected Zhongli to be an Adeptus. Even arranging that meeting with Venti and Zhongli we got to see, making Zhongli very uncomfortable, and she knew this, Venti knew it, and it was great. To her, death is a natural part of life. It's nothing to feel weird about. But again, she gets too excited about death, and death being a means to increase her business, which, again, is very insensitive to the customers. And she hates those who try to prolong their natural lifespan, which is why she's always trying to capture Qiqi. Hu Tao became the Wangsheng funeral parlor director once her grandfather passed away. She was only 13 years old at the time, even planning her grandfather's funeral exactly how he wanted it. People even saying at such a young age, it exceeded expectation. But after the ceremony was over, she immediately went to Yuan Hill, with only a bag of rations and supplies, where she would go to the Beyond, which is a boundary between the living and the dead, which we've seen in her story quest. Her family has secretly managed this location for generations. She wanted to see her grandfather one last time before he left this world forever. However, sadly, she wasn't able to find him among the spirits that lingered there. She waited days until finally a ghost of an older woman came to see her instead. This woman's spirit stated that none of the directors before her ever lingered this long and that she should go home. This was sort of the point when Hu Tao snapped and became the quirky girl that she is today. That death is a part of life and to live without regrets. And then when she finally got home to unpack all of her supplies, she reached into her bag and there it was, a pyrovision. Which, following the trend of most Liyue characters, she really doesn't care much about her vision. It's just sorta, it's there. Hu Tao's honestly not even sure when and where she actually gained it officially. It was just sort of there. But in current game today, besides the mixed reception about Hu Tao, the people that know her more personally love and respect her. and despite her always giving Zhengli a hard time, he is by far her most diligent employee and a book of knowledge. She always likes to beat around the bush that he's an Adeptus. Little does she know, he is the oldest Archon. Baizhu is the owner of the Bubu Pharmacy, the finest pharmacy in all of Liyue, and he is never seen without his white snake named Changsheng, always resting on his shoulders. Despite Baizhu being somewhat of a mysterious figure within Liyue and its citizens, and his medicine tasting awful, pretty well unanimously the citizens have complete faith and trust in the medicines that he gives, and the advice as well. Keqing also speaks very highly of Baizhu. If you have some symptoms you're unsure of, he's the guy to go see. Xinyan also gets medicine from Baizhu to help with her voice when she's performing. Baizhu is just known to be a common collective individual. His reputation is so great though that even the Adepti Xiao is aware of him. When Baizhu was off exploring the hillsides for herbs, he stumbled upon Qiqi, but despite her being a zombie with a very poor memory and cognitive abilities, she could even barely sort herbs or remember his face, he accepted her and took her in, giving her a job at the pharmacy. And after meeting this zombified little girl, he started to relentlessly pursue eternal life, even trying to seek immortality. A lot of people suspect he took Qiqi in with ulterior motives, but he does truly treat her like his own, being very protective of her. Baizhu has had to intervene on many occasions when Hu Tao attempts to lay Qiqi to rest or kidnapped her, something Qiqi dreads and fears, but even after Hu Tao wrote a letter apologizing, Qiqi still holds a grudge against her. Funny enough, Hu Tao also holds a grudge against Baizhu for his desire to cheat death and live longer. Like we just talked about, she thinks that's unnatural. His snake Changsheng is from Chenyu Vale, a much more humid and lush environment, which is where 99% sure Orobashi, the great white serpenty god that was slain in Inazuma, originally came from and is chased out during the Archon War by Rex Lapis. It's kinda ironic really, Baizhu and Hu Tao, their relationship, because they do have to work together quite a bit. Baizhu treats a lot of sickly people, and he cannot save everybody. And during this transition from sick to passing away, he greatly cares for these patients, in transitioning his patients to Hu Tao. But let's be honest, Zhengli kinda helps to be a mediator in these situations. When Baizhu was just a young boy, his hometown was struck by a horrific plague, but the man that would go on to be his master and trainer was practicing medicine there and was able to contain the spread. No miracle could bring back the lives already lost. Having lost both his parents, Baizhu began to follow in his footsteps of his master, practicing medicine. The world is full of complicated and strange diseases, but Baizhu's master was always able to provide treatment. Disease is dangerous, but it can ultimately be overcome with human intellect. Baizhu would then dedicate his life towards this. When his master would eventually pass away, all Baizhu could remember were the memories of his parents coughing up blood before they died. This also plays a part into Baiju's quest for immortality or prolonging life. All the people he could have saved back then. Baizhu vowed to not let any more lives slip away before his eyes. His master even bound by certain contracts and limitations to the medicine he could practice. Baizhu vowed and promised that he would not be confined by such things. And when he opened his eyes, a dendro vision would shine. He saw this as his master's approval. Qiqi, who is an employee and apprentice of Baizhu of the Bubu Pharmacy, she was blessed by the Adepti with a body that cannot die. Qiqi always carries around a notebook which she writes anything important, because she will definitely forget later. But on her worst days, unfortunately, she even forgets to look at her notebook. I remember when I first pulled Qiqi, it was my second day of playing this game. I pulled Jean and I got lucky and pulled Qiqi as well. I actually used her so much back in the day. I hate that she gets so much hate, being the worst 5-star. It's too bad they couldn't revamp her kit a little more. She's quiet but yet polite when dealing with customers at the pharmacy. Despite her having basically a lifeless, plain personality with almost no emotion, she will use her cryovision to protect the people she cares about. She also doesn't have a sense of smell. She is also quite naive as a child would be. She believes that coconut milk comes from animals, even dubbing a said fictional creature the Kogo Goat, which I don't even want to get into. Those of you that played Genshin back in 1.1 and 1.2, you remember all the memes. Qiqi prefers cold weather as the heat reminds her of death. Which is kinda ironic really, you'd think it'd be the opposite. But I guess in warmer temperatures her flesh begins to decay. I guess that makes sense considering the captain just told us he's immortal, but his flesh still rots. I guess a weird quirk about zombies in Genshin Impact is they have to be issued orders when they become a zombie to do anything, and if they are issued an order they have to do it without question. Qiqi's a rare case where she can issue her own orders, or order herself around to perform certain duties. But whether she's being ordered by herself or somebody else, these duties cannot be cancelled. And an only way to cancel a task, and I'm not making this up, is by hugging her with enough sincerity. Aww. Qiqi really does get along with everyone, and everyone respects Qiqi. They treat her nicely. The only person she despises is, like we talked about, Hu Tao. She states that Hu Tao has a punchable face, even stating that she wants to throw the director into the fridge and seal her away. Despite Qiqi having an absolute abysmal memory, she despises and fears and hates Hu Tao so much. She's even able to remember certain places to avoid running into her at all, which is remarkable for a zombie. Although Qiqi works for Baizhu, sometimes she does forget his face. And like we talked about with Baizhu, having ulterior motives with Qiqi and his quest for immortality and prolonging life. Qiqi, being as naive as she is actually aware of his ulterior motives towards her. What she plans to do about it though, and how sinister these ulterior motives are, we're not sure. Supposedly Qiqi's vision was given to her on the last moment of her life. She feared death when she was living, and she wanted to live. She missed her family. If only I could freeze time, how wonderful would that be? Wanting to stop the clock from turning, wanting to continue living a happy life. As she had these thoughts, tears fell from her eyes. Upon that, a cryovision appeared before her, and a mighty illuminated adepti acknowledged this moment of Qiqi right before she died as a pure moment of illumination. So the adepti blessed her with a body that cannot die. Next time you lose 50-50 to Qiqi, show some appreciation, okay? I know we've all lost 50-50s to her like dozens of times at this point, but come on, it's Qiqi. The infamous captain of the Crux, Captain Beidou, who tells it like it is rough around the edges, and is no nonsense. She is the unofficial lord of the ocean, and she's been on many crazy adventures around the entire 7 nations. Never lingering in one nation too long. She was even able to slay a powerful monster of the oceans, a leviathan, even without a vision, which really impressed the conqueror of demons, Xiao. She is also very widely respected among her crew. She will not ask anything of them that she would not do herself. Despite being very well known across Liyue for her strength, she's also known to be very easygoing, with a good judgment of character. And despite her having a more rigid personality, she is very liked among the people, even the children look up to her. Beidou does not care for treasure hoarders, although she respects the first come first serve rule when it comes to finding treasure. Beidou likes to walk a very fine line within Liyue's government laws and the Liyue Keqing. She frequently violates the laws and has no problems with paying off the hefty fines that Ningguang lays on her as punishment. Although they have their moments like discussed earlier in the video, at the end of the day, push come to shove, they are close allies when it comes to the greater good of Liyue Harbor. Apparently they also play chess with each other pretty frequently as well. Beidou also takes sympathy with people from other nations as well, how she took and smuggled Kazuha out of Inazuma during the Vision Hunt decree, allowing him to be part of the crew, even going as far as aiding the resistance in Inazuma, also being one of the few people in all of Liyue that can win money from Ningguang. Although her crew has come to know if she stumbles back to the ship tipsy, it probably wasn't her night, usually shouting all drunk, "Next time I'm going to bankrupt her." Although her crew is for the most part not hostile, they are trained, armed, and ready at all times. We know the oceans of Teyvat have taken many ships through bad storms, monsters, or other occurrences, but when it comes to Captain Beidou, her crew isn't even remotely worried about any of that. She is also known to host a fighting tournament, allowing her crew members and other people to stretch their legs, have some fun competition, but it's also a great chance for her to recruit. Beidou is more or less the what you see is what you get. She'll tell it like it is, and isn't mischievous. When Beidou was just a young child, she would often hear stories and lullabies, tales of Rex Lapis, and as a child she loved these tales, often fantasizing and in her dreams, sailing the seas of Teyvat and doing the same thing, and she would often tell herself that one day she will also slay sea monsters. Little did she know later on in her life, when she had a ship and a crew, a giant dragon Leviathan sea monster, larger than she could have imagined, raising waves dozens of meters high. This was the moment she dreamed of as a child, dreaming of slicing its head off with a single blow. She charged forth fiercely at the monster, battled. This battle lasting 4 days, with cannons, harpoons, arrows, ropes. It was an all-out war with the monster. The crew exhausted, but she knew that she only needed one strike to take down the beast. And at the crack of dawn, having neither eaten nor drinking throughout the night, with one mighty strike from her greatsword, she chopped the Leviathan's head clean off. The sound of thunder filled the heavens, and a single bolt of purple lightning struck the ocean right in front of Beidou, even as she bathed in the blood of her nemesis, this giant monster that hounded her crew. And through the purple lightning, a vision granted to her for slaying the sea monster, her most precious of treasures, a divine reward for slaying the most fearsome of the Leviathan. You never know where you might find Captain Beidou, which region she's in, what she's up to, what tavern she's drinking at, but one thing we know for sure, she is the undisputed lord of the oceans and the 7 seas of Teyvat. Yelan is a very mysterious person. Fun fact, the white coat that she actually wears was a gift that the 9th Fatui Harbinger, Pantalone, or the Regrator, actually bought for the Tsaritsa. But Yelan actually stole it from some Fatui and now wears it. What a gutsy move. She also claims to be part of the Ministry of Civil Affairs in Liyue, but it is a non-entity. She kinda just goes under the radar. Everyone within Liyue would describe her as very secretive and mysterious as well. And despite her being frequently absent from her work in the Ministry of Civil Affairs, Ningguang tolerates her general absence and Keqing appreciates her work. Yelan is phenomenal at gathering intelligence. She has her methods, so Ningguang doesn't really question it. She gets the job done, and she's efficient at the end of the day. Money and results talk when it comes to Ningguang. Yelan is incredibly stealthy and uses psychological tactics to catch her targets and gain information from them. When she isn't working, her actual favorite pastime is just simply taking a nap in the middle of the day, which makes sense. I would love to take more naps in the middle of the day myself. Unfortunately though, although she does enjoy napping, apparently she's physically frail along with everyone in her family, which is apparently a hereditary trait within her family line. It's also said that she orders the spiciest food and dishes from Xingling, so I guess she eats the most spicy food in Liyue Harbor, and absolutely despises anything sweet. Those that don't know her too well but have seen her from time to time describe her as being very pleasant and polite, but also a very powerful and intelligent woman. She's often tasked with patrolling the chasm, and her ancestors actually fought in the chasm during the cataclysm. One of her ancestors actually dying alongside one of the Yaksha deep within the chasm depths. So naturally she has a personal interest in the chasm as well, wanting to learn its history and what happened and transpired. Naturally, Yelan being a secret operative of the Liyue Keqing, she often intercepts and deals with the Fatui shenanigans. Her greatest enemy is said to be the Regrator, the 9th of the Harbingers. Yelan even once infiltrated a secret trade route that was run by the Regrator behind the scenes, intercepting the goods and picking the most precious ones of them as compensation, which is how she got that jacket. Apparently that jacket even had black fur like most of their jackets do, but she ripped it off, didn't like the style of the black fur on the coat, so she got rid of it. Wow, she really isn't shy to disrespect the Fatui, is she? Her and Diluc would get along great. Before Yelan, got her hydrovision, and worked on her own. She actually had a team that worked together to gather intel and information. The strategy was always to bait her opponents by being cunning and calculated. However, this enemy was the Abyss, and they bit off more than they could chew, for the Abyss did not take the bait. And one by one, her entire team perished and died, leaving Yelan alone and the only survivor. Angry and feeling guilty, she did not return to Liyue Harbor but hid herself away within Liyue in a small wooden hut where Ningguang would finally find her and confront her. Yelan refused to open up what had happened, but Ningguang assumed something bad. Ningguang even understood if she wanted to quit and noticed that she'd been training rigorously with her bow, all of her fingers bleeding. Whatever had happened to Yelan and her team obviously wasn't good. And in that moment, Yelan aimed at the mountain in the distance and fired her bow, and her arrow pierced through the clouds. And in that moment, it exploded into a certain water, bringing down a shower. And once the rain dissipated and the skies cleared, all that was left was a hydrovision in her hand. According to Ningguang, on that day, when Yelan gained her vision, that vision was a message. From today onward, leave all matters to Yelan. I think it's as good a time as any to talk about the Adepti. But what are the Adepti? I think we should cover that really quickly. Essentially, the Adepti are illuminated beasts within Liyue, most of them bound by contract to Rex Lapis to protect Liyue from demons or evil gods. In the most ancient times of Teyvat, Rex Lapis being referred to as the Prime Adepti. Some Adepti have extremely long lifespans and some are actually immortal, all of them taking on many different shapes and sizes, and all of them also being able to take on a human form. There are even legends that exist among humans joining the ranks of the Adepti, and humans are capable of learning Adepti arts, Shenhe being one of them. But just because you can learn the arts, they are not considered actual Adepti. However, half-blooded humans are qualified as Adepti. So let's start with Xiao, the conqueror of demons and one of the Yaksha, who fought in the Archon War and holds a very high level of seniority among the Adepti. A very reserved demeanor, who has little to no intention of getting close to mortals. He also does not want sympathy for his past and believes his fellow Yaksha would also find it insulting. He is also intensely loyal and grateful to Morax for saving him, dedicating his life to protecting Liyue as payment. He does not take it lightly. Despite constantly suffering from demon corrosion, fighting back dead gods and corruption within Liyue, Xiao is still highly resilient and still immensely powerful. Unfortunately, all of his other Yaksha comrades have either succumbed to the corruption, went mad, or outright died. Xiao has only very recently got somewhat accustomed to human etiquette and social norms, often finding humans very strange, childish, or kind of pointless at times. Most that don't know him find him just incredibly intimidating. But after meeting the Traveler, he became much more relaxed and willing to learn customs in Liyue, even attending his first Lantern Rite. He also acts as a mentor to Ganyu. Although we've only ever seen Xiao in his human-like form, his illuminated beast form is also that of a bird. There is also a pretty creepy track that plays when exploring the mountaintops of Liyue. You've probably heard it. This is Xiao in his bird form calling out to his dead Yaksha comrades. Pretty haunting and sad. Xiao is over 4,000 years old, and in his younger days and youth, which seems crazy to even say out loud, Xiao's youth, that was so long ago, he was enslaved by an ancient god who forced him to perform cruel, violent acts on his behalf, including devouring the dreams of his victims. This god was bloodthirsty and was said to be a dragon serpenty-esque type god that dwelled and lived within the chiefs of village area. But during the Archon War, of course, our boy Morax, who was dropping gods left and right, slayed Xiao's former master and set Xiao free. Morax right then and there bestowing him with the name Xiao. Xiao being deeply grateful to the Geo god that saved him, But like we know in Teyvat, when you kill gods, their lingering hatred and grudges, resentment, corrupt the land, and it has to be contained. We've seen this in Inazuma, with the dead remains of Orobashi, the Thundering Manifestation, and many other cases. Morax assembled a team known as the Yaksha, needing their help to suppress the lingering hatred of Liyue, and they were successful in their task and served Rex Lapis loyally, but obviously over time this wore them down, having to fight the souls and lingering resentment of ancient gods affected them greatly, causing them to have immense physical and psychological pain. Eventually all of his comrades falling, and Xiao being the last one, still alive but nearly succumbing himself to the corruption, but was actually saved by the Animal Archon and his soothing, cleansing music, Venti. He saved Xiao's life. I know people like to rip on Venti for bailing on Mondstadt from time to time and going MIA for years on end, but he traveled around Teyvat curing people of their curses and their corruption through his music and his powers, Xiao being one of them. Unfortunately though, Xiao's gonna suffer from this till the day he dies, even going to see Baizhu from time to time to help null the physical and psychological pain. And even though he has to live with this curse, and he isn't nearly as strong as he was in his prime, he is still an absolute force to be reckoned with, and still fiercely loyal to protecting Liyue under the Geo Archon. Now more than ever that Rex Lapis has retired, Cloud Retainer, who has lived for thousands of years, also fiercely loyal to Rex Lapis and great friends with both Madame Ping and Gui Zhang, both sharing a similar passion to mechanics and mechanisms. Cloud Retainer has spent most of her life in the shape of a giant crane, but has recently taken on a human form, and the name Zhenyun. She has successfully raised two up-and-comers, Shenhe and Ganyu, one being a human and one a half-adeptus, which are basically her children. And Cloud Retainer will always be devoted to protecting Liyue from external threats, but has taken on this human form to keep tabs on her children, caring for them deeply and wanting to see how they're integrating into Liyue society, a new transition period without its Geo Archon. However, when she first learned that Morax died in Liyue's Archon quest, before learning the circumstance of his fake death, she flew into a fury of rage and threatened to destroy all of Liyue Harbor for their crimes. She has also from day one had a habit of speaking formally, often addressing herself as one in the past tense, and much like the other ancient adepti, served and fought alongside Rex Lapis in the Archon War. Although at first a lot of people assume Cloud Retainer's quite cold and distant, she actually is a softie, and has very natural motherly-like tendencies, with younger adepti and now even the Traveler, often spending most of her time alone in solace, tinkering with different mechs, or even trying different dishes and cooking. Obviously she's an adepti, so she's born with the natural elemental energy, so she does not need a vision, but obviously she carries one to help keep her disguise. During the days of the Archon War, she often took her human form, but after those days, she remained in her crane form. Even though Ganyu and Shenhe were raised by Cloud Retainer, they never saw her in her human form, but both recognized her almost immediately. And Xiao reminisces that he hasn't seen her in that form for many years. One of my favorite Cloud Retainer moments is when she comes to check on Shenhe, and she's almost insulted that Shenhe knew exactly who she was right away in her human form. But then Shenhe states that she would always recognize her master, no matter what form she took, and Cloud Retainer just has the best motherly moment ever. Gotta love it. Speaking of her two children, or disciples, Shenhe and Ganyu. The irony between these two is that Shenhe is a human that has lived, trained, and even raised by an adepti, trained in the adeptal arts. But although she's a human, she behaves much more like an adepti, and Ganyu being an adepti, integrating herself in Liyue's society, behaving more like a human. It's just kind of ironic. So I think we'll start with Ganyu. As we know, Ganyu is a very mild-mannered and reserved individual. She is half human and half adepti, but she feels almost insecure and self-conscious of her half-adeptile heritage, and she's also very easily embarrassed or flustered. but she's very diligent and complete any task given to her. But she will speak up and actually get pretty angry when she hears people speak ill or badly about Captain Beidou, which is kind of interesting. She also has tremendous respect for the more senior Adepti like Xiao and Cloud Retainer, seeing them both as mentors and monumental figures within Liyue. Though when put on the spot with either of them, she tends to ramble and get flustered. Ganyu serves as the secretary of the Liyue Keqing, although she lives her entire life being nervous of making mistakes within her work. Everyone has complete confidence in her and she's very diligent and essential to Liyue. She takes on a lot of work, overwork, which makes her sleep deprived and prone to falling asleep. Sadly, as a result, she has very few friends outside work, and due to her age, she gets pretty forgetful. Rex Lapis has even noticed Ganyu's diligence. When the Liyue Keqing first emerged ages ago, Ganyu was its very first secretary. Though the years have come and gone, the Liyue Keqing's roster has changed, but Ganyu has remained all of these years. Morax, despite Ganyu's gentle exterior, referring to her as being preserving as stone itself. She has been the Liyue Keqing's secretary for over 1,000 years. Now what's funny is during the Archon War, Ganyu once choked a giant monster to death. How did she do this, you might ask? Well, the giant monster tried to swallow her whole, but Ganyu got lodged in its throat, so it literally died trying to eat her. The giant monster underestimated how wide Ganyu's hips are, which makes it even funnier when Cloud Retainer teases her for being a roly-poly when she was little, stating that if she fell down a hill she would roll like a ball. And Ganyu nearly dying and getting eaten alive. She's not even worried about almost dying. Her waistline saved her life and all she can do is feel embarrassed. So funny. Because she's from the species the Quillen of the Adepti, they only drink fresh water and eat plants. They're vegetarians. 3,000 years ago, Ganyu answered the call to Morax, the god of Geo, aiding him in the Archon War, and when the war was over, aiding the first ever Liyue Keqing. And in the moment she became the secretary, a vision appeared on her hip, granting her the power to resonate with Cryo. But people often wonder because she's half Adepti if she truly needs the vision. And to this day, she feels that she can serve as a bridge between Adepti and human living together, and the vision proof of her new duty. Shenhe, who originally lived among the Tianhun clan of exorcists, had a happy life as a child until around the age of 6, when her maddened father attempted to sacrifice her to a malevolent god in order to bring back his wife. So he's gonna sacrifice his daughter to save his wife. What an absolute deadbeat of a dad. But even at the age of 6, Shenhe managed to defeat the remnants of the god itself. But this incident scarred her for life, giving her homicidal tendencies and causing her to believe herself to be cursed. The Adepti have since attempted to contain her tendencies with the red ropes, binding her soul to these red ropes that she wears, which suppresses her emotions and causes her to have a very indifferent and kind of bland personality, showing basically no emotions all the time, being very practical and pragmatic. But even with the red rope suppressing her homicidal tendencies, Shenhe often comes to the conclusion to pretty well use the most violent means to eliminate others, and is incredibly still easy to anger, often giving poor Xingqiu the most hostile and menacing looks, believing him to be threatening to others, when he's literally done nothing to deserve that. She just doesn't like him. But despite all that, Shenhe does want to fit into human society and places great trust in the traveler. Due to actually living among the Adepti for so many years, the people of Liyue often mistake her as an Adepti, which she obviously isn't. Shenhe is used to eating pretty well just herbs, despite her clearly despising the taste for it. One of the things she revels in the most after moving to Liyue Harbor is the fact that she has a wide variety of food to choose from now. And obviously we know that Cloud Retainer took her in at a very young age and helped her suppress her tendencies due to her now being an orphan after her dad tried to have her killed. But Cloud Retainer saw something in her, being able to defeat this god at such an incredibly young age. I think it's pretty natural for her to have all this anger. I mean, if my dad tried to sacrifice me to this malicious god, I'd probably never be the same either. Despite her being a human though, the Adepti have insane admiration for Shenhe. It is not easy to live among the Adepti as a human, but Shenhe is said to have an insanely strong will, and is actually pretty talented to learn the adeptal arts. Because she is from a branch of a clan of exorcists, she does have blood relations with Chongyun. The funny part is Chongyun and Xingqiu are great pals, but Shenhe looks like he wants to murder him all the time. Another thing to note is that the Adepti thought it was incredible how quickly she picked up the adeptal arts. Shenhe is a human and has a human lifespan, so in the comparison of Adepti that have lived for thousands upon thousands of years, for Shenhe to pick all this up so quickly impressed the hell out of them. Both Shenhe and Ganyu trained in combat also by Cloud Retainer, and neither of them are slouches in that department. Although Ganyu is more timid, Shenhe not so much. It will come to no surprise to anyone that she gained her cryo vision, fighting for her life, being attended as a sacrifice for her father. She fought against this remnants of a god for days. The role of hunter and hunted switched between them many times. The conflict locked in a stalemate. As the shadow of death loomed over her, the gods looked upon this extraordinary girl with favor, and in this moment brought an object falling into her hands. This would tip the scales in Shenhe's favor, and ultimately be the victor, piercing the monster with ice. This cryo-vision helping Shenhe, as a young girl, escape a miserable fate and a miserable childhood, but now is a beacon of her future, integrating into the mortal realm with friends and family that care about her, and a very loving stepmother. Yanfei is another half adepti, half human, who does a ton of reading and is very knowledgeable on many topics, but her specialty is law, due to her career as a legal advisor. She also knows a lot about the other inner workings and laws of every nation, not just Liyue. But this will come to no surprise to anyone. She notes that Fontaine has the most difficult law to understand and navigate, due to their legal system and complexity. Even Ningguang, someone else that knows the inner workings and laws of Liyue, admits that Yanfei knows it better. I think what's funny about that is Ningguang wrote most of the laws herself. Although she is half Adeptus, Yanfei is not really that concerned with her adeptal heritage, and she's one of the few Adepti that actually did not sign a contract with Rex Lapis. Yanfei does have a pretty playful nature, but she does take her work very seriously. She's also willing to do pro bono work. Though Yanfei doesn't actually have a contract with Morax, her father did, along with all the other Adepti we've talked about, but her mother was just an ordinary mortal merchant. The main reason Yanfei really isn't associated with Morax is because she was born in peaceful times after most of the wars had happened. Despite Yanfei being very diligent when it comes to law in her work, she's not really a stickler for the rules. She has no problem bending or exploiting loopholes within its law system if it benefits her and her client. And pretty well everyone in Liyue Harbor would admit that Yanfei's work is for the betterment of all of Liyue. Yanfei is also pretty reasonable in her pricing if somebody can't afford it. It doesn't exactly say how she got her vision. Yanfei believes that there is no structure without law, and what she truly wishes for is for everyone to live as one pleases, but without overstepping. Everyone in Liyue, Adeptus or mortal, protects it in their own way. It doesn't give specifics on the circumstance, but it states that this is how Yanfei came to possess a pyro vision. Again, her strong sense of justice, her loving law. It's no wonder she hasn't moved to Fontaine, she'd fit right in. Chongyun, who is a young exorcist from Liyue. For those that don't know him, he comes off as very composed and stoic, but everyone that knows him pretty well would never describe him in that way. It also states that he's a very positive individual, in a literal sense, having an excess of positive energy in him, and due to this, he's vulnerable to things that are warm and fiery, even food or drinks, the sun, certain clothes. That's why we always see him eating a popsicle in his idol animation. And despite him having a cryo vision, he's not really that fond of it, and he believes that hard work and training is the true way to become stronger. And because he is an exorcist and exorcising demons, solely focusing his efforts to exorcise demons, he's extremely introverted, but his closest friend is Xingqiu. Xingqiu always trying to break him out of his introverted self by pulling pranks or practical jokes. And because Chongyun is so focused on his work and lacks the social experience, he is quite gullible. Apparently even Xingqiu will talk about many of the books he reads and the stories, and Chongyun thinks he's talking about things that have really happened, even though they're just stories. It is sort of funny though, although Chongyun is susceptible to heat and warmer things in general, his excessive positive energy makes him the perfect person to roam the land, combating demons with his exorcism. It doesn't really hurt either that he was born into a renowned family of exorcists, so he has a lot of natural abilities as well. The first time Chongyun ever ventured out as an exorcist, it was a fairly wealthy woman from Liyue Harbor, who paid top dollar to have these evil spirits and demons that were hounding her eradicated, eliminated, or just removed. She hadn't slept in days, but no matter who she paid, they always came up empty-handed. Chongyun wanting to help her as well, but he had to postpone asking her because of the sun. I guess there was a stretch of sunny days, but that night Chongyun brought a chair over and sat up all night in the middle of her house. That night, the strange sounds and what was haunting the woman was no more. She finally had a good night's sleep, even coming to Chongyun the next day, running to his house with abundance of gold to give him as thanks, but he refused to accept any of it other than his usual 100 mora fee. Ever since then, he's had quite the reputation. It's also not specifically stated how he gained his vision. He's not even 100% sure which of his goals is what landed him a vision or what it responded to. All he knows is that he got one, and it's very mysterious how. And although gaining a vision was never the end-all be-all for Chongyun, one thing is for sure, he's incredibly relieved that he did not get a pyro vision, because that would just be awful. He thinks it must be his resolve that earned him the cryo vision and the god's favor, but strange nonetheless. That would have been hilarious if he got a pyro vision though. Yun Jin is a skilled director, playwright, and singer who is well renowned throughout Liyue and even Mondstadt for her plays and her songs, enjoying this passion and going through many lengths to ensure that everyone who watches her performance leaves satisfied. She also has a great reputation for being very friendly through people that know her and just fans that get to meet her. It's also said that she clashes with all of the other performers within Liyue because people get too stuck in tradition, not wanting to expand or try new things. I think it's very wholesome because apparently Yun Jin is very fond of rock and roll even if it's not her forte, which means she visits Xinyan quite a bit, listening to her music and watching her performances, at a minimum of once a week. Xinyan also appreciates Yunjin's work but finds her style of art and music suffocating, being under the microscope with more traditional style music. The Liyue opera is one of the more traditional arts throughout its history, so I suppose Xinyan's comment about it being more suffocating makes sense, and it's some elders in Liyue that actually run the opera house. Yunjin actually made a name for herself at a very young age when she stunned the audience with her sweet voice and her lively costumes at her debut performance. The more she performs, the better honed her animated and dynamic style becomes. Whether it's the damsel in distress or the mighty honorable hero, she can screenwrite and play any role. But it's all in the family though, because her father was actually a pretty renowned playwright himself, and her mother used to be a famous opera singer in Liyue Harbor, and her mother took the mantle from her grandfather, so it seems that it's a generational thing, being performers in Liyue, and that she comes by it pretty honestly. Apparently it gave a sigh of relief to her parents that she actually truly loved and was passionate about the arts. A lot of children that are born into what their parents or grandparents are doing sort of turns them off and makes them want to go a different direction. That's a pretty relatable feeling. I think we've all been there with our parents. Her parents were just relieved though that she wanted to be a screenwriter, singer, and performer, and actually want to do it like it's her actual passion. If you want to stretch her ancestry back even further, before they were opera singers, I guess her more ancient ancestors were weaponsmiths in Liyue. And one rebel ancestor of Yunjin decided that he was sick and tired of making weapons for war, and grew an interest into singing, dancing, and performing. And that's where the family lineage of being performers actually started. Interestingly enough, how she gained her vision. She was performing in a play about a very dangerous walk in the snow. It was a snowy day in the play and the character that she was playing. And one of her earliest performances acting. Playing a character that was lost on a snowy treachery walk, feeling helpless. And I guess she got so caught up in the character and the feeling in playing that role, that when she went backstage after the play and took off her costume, she found a vision in one of the sleeves. I guess that's one way to do it. We all know Xinyan, from her loud and outgoing personality, her quirky hairstyle, and obviously her rock and roll, being a very niche and obscure type of music within Genshin Impact, and the more medieval setting of that entire world. And she wants to spread her music throughout all of Teyvat, so she travels quite a bit and has seen every single nation, although she finds it difficult improving her reputation for many reasons. But this doesn't discourage her. She also doesn't have any formal training for her music, it's a self-taught skill. Obviously, by her loud and outgoing personality and her style and aesthetic, she likes to stand out in her own way. But unfortunately, this leads to people thinking she's either weird or terrifying. She is aware of this, but she's unwilling to compromise who she is. And for somebody that's a rebel and a rock and roller, apparently she keeps her home incredibly tidy. The place that rock and roll even originated from, and the only place it's sorta relevant, is Fontaine. She is basically the pioneer for anywhere else in Teyvat, especially Liyue, to really experience this genre of music. Because of her perseverance, she's actually built up somewhat of a fan base that are extremely loyal, attending all of her performances. From the hustle and bustle and stress of the nation of contracts and all the business throughout the day, a lot of people do find her performance a great stress relief. The Steambird in Fontaine even writing that she is a rare rock and roll talent and a master performer who really knows how to create an atmosphere. We all know that's probably Charlotte that wrote that. And it was after one of these electrifying performances that she gained her pyro vision. The vision seemed ready to turn night into day. I do feel that she is an underrated character. I do wish I would see her in more story quests that aren't side quests or event quests, but actually like more meat and potatoes story within Genshin Impact. I know she was added in 1.1 after the initial release of the two story quests, both Mondstadt and Liyue, but I think she's a very relatable character, being a rebel, never being able to fit into Liyue Harbor as she was, just trying to find her own path and her own roots. And any time that you buck the social norm, people think you're weird or obscure. Definitely like the character, but my god, Hoyoverse, why don't you give us an option to have her as a skin with her hair down, because it looks so good. Not that I even hate her hairstyle the way it is, it's kind of quirky in its own way, but you gotta admit, her hair down looks really nice. Gaming, who everyone calls gaming. Still think it's funny when his drip marketing was shown. Everyone was just losing their minds over this. A young and energetic man working for the Sword and Strongbox Secure Transport Agency. He has an incredible work ethic and eager to complete whatever his clients may ask of him, and he'll fiercely protect his cargo regardless of the situation, and he's trained to do so. He also obviously very much enjoys wushu dances, one of his hobbies and something that he practices regularly, and well, his whole entire gameplay and kit is based around this, so we did have a bit of an inkling of that. He eventually wants to retire from transporting goods and become a professional dancer. Well, maybe you should talk to Yunjin. In his youth though, apparently, he was known as a troublemaker and a bit of an oddball. Something pretty sad about Gaming though is that he's incredibly close and cherishes his mother. A letter that she once wrote to him he carries in a book every time he goes on his trade routes or wherever he's delivering goods. Unfortunately, she did pass away, and he misses her dearly, thinks of her every day. Unfortunately, Gaming is actually at odds with his dad. His dad took him to see a performance of the wushu dance, and then he became inspired to become one himself. But this actually upset his father, because he wants him to continue their family business. And apparently this argument and falling out nearly caused them to fist fight, but he ended up leaving home to fend for himself. Now Gaming had his own dreams and ambitions. Ah, the good old days. I remember that almost happening with my dad, but in his defense, it was my fault. I accidentally broke a window, and my dad was not too happy about that when he came home from work. I thought he was overreacting. They've since reconciled though, and he's agreed to let Gaming pursue his own path. How Gaming actually received his vision, he fought some bandits that stolen some goods. There was 10 of them and only one of him, but he sustained many injuries during this fight. So while the Millilith were patching Gaming up, they were absolutely stunned that this boy took on 10 bandits by himself and managed to save all of the goods, all of the merchandise. Except there was something extra among the goods. A vision. So they wrapped it while he rested and put it beside his sword. Gaming was caught completely off guard when he first actually grabbed the gem, even questioning who it belonged to, wondering if it was even his. He didn't feel like he did anything super spectacular, even saying to himself, I guess the vision really probably might be mine then. But I heard that visions have something to do with strong wishes, and I never got a vision from my dancing, and now I just randomly got one on the job? Does that mean that I'm always meant to guard merchandise and not dance? Gaming started to overthink this completely, but nevertheless, he accepted the vision and took great pride in it, as well as the work he'll continue to do. And finally we get to the last character in Liyue, Yaoyao, who is the youngest disciple of Madame Ping, also known as Streetward Rambler. But Yaoyao is a very wholesome and genuine character, trying her very best to act like a proper young adult, doing right by others, and making the world a better place. But she's lived somewhat of a secluded life. She hasn't really traveled outside Liyue, but she is very curious of the outside world, being raised in the mountainside of Qiqi village, and making a lot of animal friends in her youth. What's also kind of funny about Yaoyao is that she is the youngest disciple of Madame Ping, but she takes care of the other seniors like she's the elder sister. Xiangling herself often finds herself thinking, why does it always feel like Yaoyao is taking care of me and talking to me like I'm a child? I'm her senior as a disciple. Yaoyao being raised in the countryside and in the wilderness, being kind and making friends with the wildlife and animals is what drew the Adepti to her. Such a considerate and warm-hearted child, even being labeled as a student that every teacher dreams of. And both the Adepti and the people of Liyue have no doubt in their minds that she's going to be a very cultured, knowledgeable, and influential figure in Liyue Harbor one day. Madame Ping being very proud to have a disciple like her. The thing about her parents, though, is that they preferred life outside the city and the hustle and bustle of Liyue Harbor. That is why they initially moved to Qiqi village on the outskirts before she was even born, to live in their humble abode. Yaoyao gaining many companions, the birds, the beasts, the fish, everything, all the creatures of nature. And her wholesome demeanor is what caught the eye of Madame Ping, and wanted to take her on as a disciple. At first, her parents were not entirely willing to let their daughter live in Liyue Harbor, but Madame Ping's reputation was able to persuade them for this being the best for their daughter. Even though their relationship started as a teacher-disciple, Madame Ping has grown quite fond of her like family, and most people would describe them as having a very grandmother and granddaughter-like relationship. And now that Yaoyao has actually lived in Liyue Harbor, she actually prefers the day-to-day life in the city, but still goes back to her roots from time to time. Yaoyao's little companion, Yugi, I'm probably butchering that name, but her little companion that never leaves her side, was actually created by Cloud Retainer. Madame Ping just originally wanted to introduce her newest and youngest student to Cloud Retainer, and help teach Yaoyao further, helping expand her teachings in the adeptal arts by training with different senior adepti. But I guess Yaoyao's clever and caring manner proved to be a lot more than Cloud Retainer was expecting. And Cloud Retainer, without even being asked or prompted, created a wondrous machine rabbit. And this was a gift in order to protect her from any danger that she might run into on her travels or whatever she might be doing. Yaoyao absolutely loved this gift. She quickly named it and took it everywhere she went. And that continues to be true to this day. Cloud Retainer even telling Madame Ping, one should inform you that if you ever lose Yaoyao, all you need to do is call out its name, and her location shall be made known to you. So not only was this companion protection for Yaoyao, but it was a means for Madame Ping to find her wherever she went, if she ever got lost or into trouble. It doesn't specifically tell us how she gained a vision, but apparently Yaoyao gaining a vision troubled her quite a bit because she was unsure as to why she actually gained a vision. She wondered if the gods want to reward her for her deeds that she has done, or because maybe she was just a respectful pupil. She noticed that one of her teacher's elder pupils, Xiangling, and Auntie Cloud Retainer's student Shenhe also had visions. So maybe it is simply that the gods recognize the Adepta and, by association, all of them gain visions. That is how Yaoyao rationalized how she gained her Dendro vision. But regardless of her trying to rationalize how she got the Dendro vision, this was divine acknowledgement. She could not betray such hopes and trust from the gods. As a disciple of her master, she would follow her example to protect people, also wanting to extend universal love to all people. She may still have a long way to go in her training overall, but one thing is for sure, and everyone knows this, she is destined for greatness one day, and will be a very important character in Liyue's future. And that is going to wrap up all of the characters in Liyue, touching on their lore, backstories, and who they are, different attributes, characteristics. Some characters have a lot more lore and get a lot more love from the Genshin devs than others, but each character is unique and interesting in their own way. There are some characters I'd like to get more lore on, or be included in more important prominent story arcs, but I am curious to see in the comments which Liyue character is your personal favorite. Maybe you're watching this video in the future and they've already added a couple new Liyue characters. It is the only region that gets consistent characters added to it every year, so this video is the most likely out of all of these videos to get a little bit dated as time goes on. Maybe we'll get some more Madame Ping backstory in 5.4 or whenever Lantern Rite drops. I also want to say thank you so much for being patient for this one. I know it took a little longer than I wanted to get released, and I'm obviously going to do Inazuma next. I hope it doesn't take as long as this one was, but these videos do take time. And with that said, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.